Veterans Day, one pilgrim's perspective on it. No shofar today. Just me talking to you about Veterans Day. Took me most of the day to put this together. I hope and pray that it honors those that I served with. And I hope they'll drop me a line to let me know if it did. I don't mean to be sorrowful or maudlin today, because I'm not. But it is a serious thing. At least to me. So here we go. Let's talk about a few statistics about Veterans Day. Give me one moment here. Change this lighting a little bit. Hope that's a little better. A few statistics about Veterans Day and military service. The closer you get to up to date, the harder it is to get good stats. So please bear with me a little bit. These stats are from 2015 and 2014. Perhaps some later are available, but honestly, I have been tied up for hours dealing with, hours over days, dealing with cell phone issues and some ID theft issues that I absolutely have to clear up before my wife and I travel to Washington State on the 15th to see our new grandson, Alexander Jacob, and his mom, dad, and big brother. So I haven't had the time I would normally dedicate to better research available to me, but I wanted to get this out. It's just inside of me. So all that being said, I doubt these stats that I'm going to give you have changed much from year to year. I've researched for myself in past years, and they're pretty much in line with those stats. Approximately 1.4 million of the 350 million Americans, or about 0.4%, were actively serving in the armed forces in the year 2015. As of 2014, Veterans Administration data estimated 22 million living veterans in the U.S. population. If you add those stats together, that means that about 7.3% of all living Americans either have or are serving or served in the armed forces of the U.S. at some point in their lives. Now that's a pretty small percentage. In fact, there are quite likely many of you living in the U.S. who don't even know a veteran. Or you know one, but they are the quiet guy or gal down the street who you know to say hi to, but you have no idea that they served. Maybe they moved to your community after they got home, so you don't know that they served, where they served, or how they served. So I just want to talk to you a little bit, give you a little perspective, maybe, about the sacrifice all veterans and their families make. Now, these days, a larger percentage of those serving end up deployed somewhere where there is a hot conflict, because there are many going on all over the world, some you don't even hear about. And yet still, the majority of veterans serve quietly and return to their lives, or try to, preferring to remain mostly anonymous. We do our gig, we go home. Let's look at those who served, some categories, if you will. Just a broad brush, going from those who gave all to those who gave some. Look, I'll miss a lot, maybe whole groups for sure. And if you want, you can find much more info. You just have to be willing to do the research. And you should. You should know the cost paid for the freedom you enjoy. So here is was my attempt at a very incomplete overview. I hope some of my veteran friends will let me know if I hit or miss the mark in trying to explain a little about us veterans. So, under the very truthful banner of some gave all gave some, I say the following. Some never came or never will come home. The check that they wrote, that we all wrote, that most of us, at least when we first enlisted, never dreamed would actually be cashed, was cashed in full to preserve a freedom they never got to taste much of. We celebrate them on Memorial Day and Veterans Day. The price they paid and their families paid and continue to pay is incalculable. As God's Word tells us, and as Jesus set the example, Jesus said in John 15:13, and it stands today as it stood then, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Every veteran signed a check. The amount was blank, and it included up to and including my life. So though many of us may not have been asked to lay it down, we offered it, and we continue to. Now, those categories, or at least some, it would take, books and books and books have been written on it. So this is just to give you a little perspective from someone who has served. So some came or will come home broken. We talked about those who laid down their life. There are also those who come home broken. Their check got cashed in the form of missing limbs, disfigurements, strange cancers and other blood diseases, shrapnel, buried where it's too dangerous to remove. And when it does move on its own someday, they're quite possibly dead. I have one friend now who still works at the VA who has shrapnel in them that they can't remove. And if it does move, he'll probably never walk again, or he may die. That's a reality. Traumatic brain injuries that leave some veterans either slightly to all the way to totally incapable of doing sometimes even the simplest things for themselves. You've seen some commercials for things like Wounded Warriors, etc. Those are realities. Not every injury is visible either. Take that, maybe jacked up vet who's always training as if, you'd almost think he had an enemy chasing him. He does. Inside. The training, the prepping is his way of trying to cope, to compensate, to somehow be ready for that next battle, even though the battle has been left far behind him, but not here. He's seen things no young man, he or she has seen things no young man or woman should ever see. And sometimes they're the vet who comes home who can't sleep. Maybe just can't bring himself to be inside. Closed doors and walls mean he can't see the enemy approaching. The dreams he has of things no man or woman should ever see that won't go away. Call it PTSD or whatever the newest term is. Doesn't matter. Treatments even today are hit and miss. They're getting better, but they're still hit and miss. So often these vets, they self-medicate just to make it go away. They commit suicide because they can't handle it. If they self-medicate, course, it doesn't go away. Maybe, just maybe, it disappears for that short self-destructive period of self-medication, only to return when it wears off. And of course, that leaves its own destruction. Often their families are destroyed because they can't escape the things none of us should ever have to see, and they carry with them. Many vets, my older brother among them, will never be put on a remembrance wall because, like him, they came home, their body in one piece. Although they watched their friends die right beside them, perhaps, and then came home self-medicating when the dreams came back, as they always did, until my brother self-medicated himself to being literally brain dead. Others, like him, to being homeless or overdosing on pain-killing, mind-numbing drugs, victims of Vietnam, Korea, and other wars that will never get properly put into the stats of folks who got injured as a vet, serving for your freedom. Many, a large portion, come home with issues, health and otherwise, that haunt them for all of their lives, making life decisions for them as they try to live as normal as possible, paying whatever price they paid for all of our freedoms. Lost limbs, broken families, so much time spent away that you rarely feel a part of anything, at least for years, to get back to feeling a part of your own family. Everyone grew up. They lived their lives. Your kids got used to you never being there. And often now that you're home, resent that you are there. Neither you nor your spouse knowing quite how to handle it. If you came home injured, everything from telling the kid having to hear, you have to help dad with X, when the child, who should get to be a child, is saying inside him or herself perhaps, oh, they were never there for me. I mean, they're a kid. Don't give them, the weight of perspective, Or they totally love mom or dad and are real heroes in helping them, but it still steals their childhoods, making them grow up quickly and miss much of the childhood things others take for granted because they have a duty to dad or mom. More on families a little bit later, because back to the vets. There are some vets, some of us, who survived their service pretty well, like me, whether seeing combat or not. They come home, they live their lives, maybe start businesses, become successful at some level, successful members of their communities. So what makes them different? What sum did they give? Well, as mentioned above, they served away from home. They missed birthdays, graduations, weddings, births, deaths, holidays. They, and at times their families, moved from base to base, often overseas, barely being anywhere long enough for spouses and children to make friends before everyone's moving yet again. Or mom or dad are going away for a year or more. These days, there is at least the internet and video chat. Prior to that, when I served and others who were a little older than me or even a little younger, didn't have the kind of internet video chat we have today. Not that that is a replacement for being there, but at least you can see and talk to each other. Prior to that, you might come home to a 2-year-old child you never met, you never saw. And maybe you get to become a part of their life again for a year or so, till you get orders to go back overseas. Boop! then you're sent away again if you're a career soldier. Depending upon the world's situation, who knows how long you'll be gone. I have friends who had tours. By tours, I mean their enlistments. Extended over more than 2 years. And depending upon circumstances, maybe they got leave to come home for a week or two somewhere during that forced extension. And if you just decided to not go back, you'd be AWOL and go to jail. So, every vet who served faced things for you. So you could live a peaceful life here at home. Those things, they stole things from their lives. At a bare minimum, time and priceless memories that you would not want to give up. They'll never have them. I'll never have them. Those things I missed. I was away when my dad died. I was away when that older brother I mentioned passed. I was in Germany. I miss weddings. I miss births of nephews, nieces. I don't have any of those memories. I have other memories, as do other vets like me. Loneliness over holidays. They were spending out on patrol or in the field or training. Difficulty making mortgage payments because military pay is barely above the poverty level. That's right. Especially in the enlisted corps, we do all of the above mentioned for barely above the poverty level pay and benefits. Truth. So do me a favor, honor mostly the service members and their families who have someone there who gave all or much. But don't dishonor those who came back mostly whole from whatever amount of time they served by saying things like, "Oh, so you never saw combat," and then kind of dismissing their service. Yeah, I've had that happen. Try to be circumspect about it. But it's like I said, while they were watching their child, while you were watching your child, a relative, enter kindergarten, graduate first, second grade, high school, earn that football trophy. And maybe it wasn't your child, maybe it was a relative. That veteran was missing all that. So you could do it in peace and freedom. Births, deaths, marriages, children. Families. I touched on it a little bit above. Wow. Do they ever serve? They never stop serving. Separation, constant movement, rarely enough money, and then maybe dad or mom doesn't come home. Or comes home different. In any number of a myriad of ways, from needing constant care to just not being the mom or dad you remember. Something's changed, and they can't tell you about it. And you, as a wife or a child, can't explain it to yourself, much less anybody else who doesn't get it. Families serve. Oh yes, they serve whole families. Way beyond any term of enlistment a veteran has. Now look, I know it probably seems like it, but I did not sit here today and write this for you to feel sorry for vets. No. Please, no way. But how else do I give you some perspective? Every one of us stood up and said, even if we didn't know Christ Jesus at the time, that we were going to follow his model from the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 13. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends, one's country, one's countrymen, my friends. We wrote that check, we signed it in our blood, and we left the amount blank. Our families, sometimes unknowingly, basically wrote the same check. Maybe they didn't know it, but they were writing it. Maybe not up to and including their life in terms of losing it, but yes, often in terms of giving it wholly to serve both the nation and their veteran for a lifetime. Look, we don't expect you to understand us. Our life experiences are vastly different from every non-vet and non-vet family. But we would like you to have some perspective on us, to try to understand that we've walked a different path. None of us returning the same we were, whether physically evident or not. Many of you have seen the movie Saving Private Ryan. If you haven't, you should. Rarely do folks get it right. They got a lot of that right. But if you watch it, I want you to think of it not just as the Private Ryan figure who was sent home and all those years lived with the burden of, did I live a life worthy of their sacrifice for me? Was I a good man or woman? Did I honor their sacrifice? You know, the graveside scene from the movie. The guy about my age was a little slow, was walking through Arlington and crying, asking his wife, "Was I a good man?" Sorry, give me a sec. All right, so I'm going to do this. You want to honor a veteran? Yes. You can buy their meal or a cup of coffee at a restaurant. You can say thank you, and you should. And trust me, it's appreciated more than you know. But honestly, what we want you most to do, live a life worthy of the sacrifice of those who stood on the wall for freedom. They gave you the freedom to live in peace and prosperity. Yes, times, especially right now and from time to time, are tough. But if you live in America, you are richer. Your personal space, your living conditions, everything are better than 95% of the rest of the world. So live the best life you can. That is what best honors our sacrifice. That's why we made it. Maybe not when we started out, but as we went along, even if we only had one tour of duty, we kind of got the point. We understood by the time we went home or before why we were there. And we were okay with that. That's why we made that sacrifice. Like I say, often we were young and didn't really get it right away. It was almost like it was a job until we understood it wasn't a job. It's a duty. It's an honor to serve. And we did it so that you can have a life of freedom and prosperity. Enjoy your families. Build your sweet memories. Go to every graduation, marriage. Be there for the last days of your parents and their funerals. I'm not trying to be maudlin. I mean it. Enjoy them. Enjoy those things. All of them. They are veterans' gift to you. I know. hard realities most never even consider. And I hope I didn't ruin your Veterans Day by asking you to consider them. But I would say please do consider them, at least from time to time, because it is not just a slogan that freedom is not free. I and my fellow vets, Joe, if you're listening to this, Jan, if you're listening to this, Bob, Dennis, others, Ricky, we know some who gave all. There are some, of course, who gave all, many. And all of us, we gave some. So everybody out there, America and worldwide, sometimes we were out there fighting for you as well as for us. Enjoy your Veterans Day. I have and I will, because I know that out there is another me taking his turn at the watch so I could be free. This is one Veteran Pilgrim. I'm out.